I am running for President of the United States.
I am proud to announce my candidacy for President of the United States of America.
Today, I am announcing that I'm running for President of the United States.
I am officially running for President of the United States, and we are going to make our country great again.
Hello, welcome to Who Are They? An analysis of identity in the US presidential primary campaigns. When running a campaign, politicians go through great efforts to construct their campaign identity. This identity is the basis for their platform. It allows them to establish a common ground with the general voting public with the aim of building up their community of supporters. One very important way of establishing and maintaining common ground is through language. Since the start of his campaign, Trump's simple rhetoric and direct way of speaking has been a talking point across media. And while he has divided Americans, he has still gathered a mass of supporters. So what is it about him that people find appealing? And how does he manage to continually dominate the media space, generate public support, and win delegate votes? To investigate, I will be looking at how the top 4 candidates use pronouns in their speeches to create a sense of identity. I will be looking at the Democratic candidates Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders, and the Republican candidates Ted Cruz and Donald Trump. Cruz has recently dropped out of the race, but I will still include him in this analysis. I am particularly interested in how each of these candidates uses plural pronouns. For example, the pronouns we and they, and our and their, to see who they associate themselves with and who they distance themselves from. What are the similarities and differences in language used by the candidates, specifically with regards to the third-person plural pronouns? What are the key groups that the candidates refer to when using these pronouns? Does the use of pronouns reveal anything about the candidate's campaign identity and message? Of the 4 candidates, Trump, shown in purple on the graph, has the longest speech and uses the most number and highest percentage of pronouns. Clinton and Sanders have a similar use of pronouns, and Cruz has the least amount. All of the candidates use we to most commonly refer to America and Americans. Clinton uses we to refer to this group nearly 55% of the time, with Sanders following close behind at 54%. Trump comes in third, using we to refer to Americans and their country about 50% of the time. When the candidates use the pronoun they are referring to different groups. Clinton most commonly uses it to refer to the other candidates, about 30% of the time. Sanders refers to the wealthy, about 25% of the time. Cruz refers to his family, and Trump refers to other countries, including China, Mexico, Japan, Saudi Arabia, Iran, Iraq, and Yemen, about 50% of the time. When Clinton uses the pronouns we and our, she is most frequently referring to the USA and to the American people.
We Americans may differ, bicker, stumble, and fall, but we are at our best when we pick each other up, when we have each other's back. Our American family is strongest when we cherish what we have in common and fight back against those who would drive us apart.
She also uses we to refer to the US government, other Democrats, her campaign party, and her supporters.
When President Clinton honored the bargain, we had the longest peacetime expansion in history. When President Obama honored the bargain, we pulled back from the brink of depression. President Obama asked me to serve, and I accepted because we both love our country.
When Clinton uses the pronouns they and their, she is most frequently referring to the other candidates or to Republicans in general.
These Republicans, they pledge to wipe out tough rules on Wall Street. They want to take away health insurance. They shame and blame women. They want to put immigrants at risk of deportation.
Her use of they to refer to Americans and veterans is used neutrally. She does not make any distinct separation from these groups in any case. So while Hillary aligns herself with the country and her fellow Democrats, she distances herself from the other candidates, politicians, and specifically other Republicans. This can be seen in her exclusionary use of the pronoun they. When Sanders uses the pronoun we, as well as our, he is also most commonly referring to the American people and to the country.
Today, with your support and the support of millions of people throughout our country, we begin a political revolution to transform our country economically, politically, socially, and environmentally.
Sanders also aligns himself with his campaign party, making promises to the people of what he will be able to do when he is their president.
But we are going to build a movement of millions of Americans who are prepared to stand up and fight back. We are going to take this campaign directly to the people.
When Sanders uses the pronoun they, he is most commonly referring to the wealthy and to young Americans.
What the Supreme Court said, essentially, was that it was not good enough for the billionaires to own much of the economy. They can now own the United States government as well, and that is precisely what they are trying to do.
As part of his campaign, Sanders does distance himself from the wealthy. However, his use of they to refer to young people appears to be more of a recognition that he is not part of that group, rather than with the intent to create a division. His campaign platform is based on the idea of giving the country back to the people, and he does appear to utilize pronouns to create a divide between everyday Americans and the select few at the top, as well as distancing himself from the Republicans. Cruz uses we and our to most frequently refer to Americans and the country.
These are all of our stories. These are who we are as Americans. And when we faced impossible odds, the American people rose to the challenge. The power of the American people when we rise up and stand for liberty.
Aside from referring to Americans, he uses our to refer to people of the same religious faith as him. And interestingly, he is the only candidate of the four to make religion a key part of his speech.
Which is that our rights, they don't come from man. They come from God Almighty.
Cruz doesn't use that many instances of the pronouns they or their, and when he does, they are used neutrally. They is most frequently referring to his family and friends, and their is used to refer to Americans.
Imagine your parents when they were children.
Overall, Cruz doesn't appear to use pronouns to either strategically associate or distance himself from any specific groups. Looking at Cruz's speech as a whole, he relies much more heavily on other rhetoric devices, such as personal stories and narratives of belonging. He uses repetition of the word imagine throughout his speech, which is in contrast to the other candidates' more action-focused speeches.
Our country is in serious trouble. We don't have victories anymore. Our enemies are getting stronger and stronger by the day, and we as a country are getting weaker.
Trump uses we and our to refer to a number of different groups. However, he overwhelmingly uses we to refer to America, its people, and the government, and in some cases we refers to all three of these groups.
When did we beat Japan at anything? When do we beat Mexico at the border? They're laughing at us, at our stupidity. It's coming from all over South and Latin America, and it's coming probably from the Middle East. But we don't know, because we have no protection and we have no competence. We don't know what's happening.
Trump uses the pronouns they and their to refer to two main groups. The first being foreign countries, like China, Mexico, and Saudi Arabia, among others. The second group being the other candidates as well as politicians generally.
Politicians are all talk, no action. Nothing's going to get done. They will not bring us, believe me, to the promised land. They will not. I've watched the politicians. I've dealt with them all my life. They will never make America great again. They don't even have a chance. They're controlled fully by the lobbyists, by the donors, and by the special interests. Fully. How stupid are our leaders? How stupid are these politicians to allow this to happen? How stupid are they?
Trump utilizes a lot of pronouns throughout his speech. He builds up a sense of threat coming from foreign countries, and using collective pronouns creates a division between America, us, we, our, and the rest of the world, they, them, their. He puts himself in the same group as the rest of America, separating them from the politicians, and then positions himself as the leader of their group. The analysis shows that all four candidates use the inclusive third-person plural pronouns to some extent to most frequently align themselves with the country and its people. What they all do differently is distance themselves from different groups using exclusive plural pronouns. And in the case of Cruz, he doesn't appear to utilize pronouns much in this way at all. Clinton uses inclusive plural pronouns to align herself with Americans and the country. She also aligns herself with the government and the Democratic Party. The identification with this group is consistent with previous research findings on pronoun use in her interviews and debates, and the authors of that research posit that her strong identification with the government may likely be related to her notable history and experience as the First Lady. It follows that Clinton uses the pronoun they to distance herself from the Republican Party, and to distance herself specifically from any responsibility associated with the actions of their party and party members. Bernie Sanders' campaign is founded on the idea of taking back the power from the few and giving it to the many. He largely uses the pronouns we and our to refer to Americans, associating himself strongly with this group. And while he doesn't always use plural pronouns to explicitly create a division, he does so with the pronoun they when referring to the rich and wealthy. Ted Cruz is in contrast to the other candidates in that he doesn't use many plural pronouns in his speech at all. Those that he does use aren't necessarily strategic in the same way as Clinton and Trump. Majority of the time, the pronoun they in Cruz's speech refers to family, both his and his supporters. Instead, Cruz focuses more on other linguistic and rhetoric devices, such as the narrative of belonging, as a way to try to build a relationship with his audience. Trump leverages collective pronouns the most, and based on data analysis, does appear to be using these strategically to create an explicit polarization. He does this through his continued use of third-person plural pronouns to establish groups and create a divide between these groups. For example, between the United States and the rest of the world, and between his party and the politicians. Trump uses the concept of nationalistic flagging by continually associating both himself and his audience with the rest of Americans and with the country as a whole. Combined with his appeals to fear and anger, Trump sets himself forward as the prototypical leader to make the country great again.